a time, in a large peaceful village, there lived a woman named Orie, who had two beautiful young daughters named Uwa and Akachi. Uwa and Akachi were of the same height, the same complexion, but Akachi has a short nose, while Uwa had a long, beautiful nose. They looked alike, and people sometimes mistook them for twins. Akachi was the youngest, while Uwa was the eldest. They were all living peacefully till one day, a man came to ask for Akachi's hand in marriage. He introduced himself as Chuks from the neighboring village. Orie was happy, but at the same time sad. She thought the man came for Uwa, but it turned out to be Akachi. Akachi asked her mother why she was wearing a long face. She replied her saying that the marriage would not work. At a moment, Akachi looked surprised, and she asked her mother the reason she said what she said. Then, Orie led the cat out of the bag by letting her know that she can't get married before her elder sister Uwa. She further explained that, according to the traditions of the land, the Ada of the family must get married first before the youngest would be able to get married. And since Uwa had no suitors yet, she would have to wait till she gets a man to marry before she could think of getting married. Akachi and Chuks were so sad and worried. They asked if there was any other way to boycott the traditions, but her mother made it clear to her that there was no other way than to wait and pray to the gods to find a husband for her sister Uwa. Akachi was so bitter because Uwa had no suitors yet. That same night, Orie called her two daughters to talk to them. She pleaded with Akachi to have patience and give her sister time to get a man to marry. She also told Uwa to hasten up and let them know when she has suitors. A month later, no man came to ask for Uwa's hand in marriage, and that made Akachi to be more worried, for she had no time to wait forever. Chuks was worried too, because he needed to get married first before he can be able to inherit his father's properties. Weeks later, Chuks could no longer wait, and he married another maiden from another village, whose traditions does not forbid the youngest to get married first. Akachi was so heartbroken when she heard the news, and she was so angry at her sister Uwa for bringing bad luck to her. And from that day onward, she began to distance herself from her sister. 2 months after, another man came to ask for Akachi's hand in marriage, but she lost the man to another maiden. Akachi was so pissed off as she began to call her sister a witch who doesn't want her progress. Orie tried all she could to make Akachi understood that Uwa was not to be blamed, but the traditions of the land are to be blamed. But Akachi never listened, as she continued to blame Uwa for making her lose 2 suitors in few months. Weeks after, Akachi had another suitor. Akachi was so scared to lose him like others, so she decided to go against the traditions and go ahead with the wedding, with or without the traditions. But her mother and elders of the family had a different plan. The day of the wedding came and everyone was invited. When the groom and his people arrived, the elders asked Akachi to go fetch some firewood from the farm, that it was part of the wedding rites. Akachi innocently agreed and headed to the farm to fetch some firewood. But before she came back, her husband had married her sister Uwa instead of her, unknowingly to him. The bride's face was covered, and that made it more difficult for him to identify the two sisters. Akachi was so pained and heartbroken. Her mother Orie and the elders tried to explain to her that instead of losing the third suitor, and remained unmarried waiting for suitors to come for her sister, they decided to get Uwa married to the one available. But Akachi was so bitter to listen to any of them. She ran away for days to go cool her head, but the pain never left. She stopped talking to her mother for supporting the elders in doing what they did. Uwa was unhappy in her husband's house. She was forced to marry her sister's husband because of traditions. She married a man she knew nothing about, let alone loving him, just because of traditions. But her husband learned to love her so much. He tried all he could to make her understand that traditions are to be blamed for what happened to her and her sister Akachi. No matter what he does, Uwa finds it irritating and would always shout at him each time he tries to make out with her at night. He gave her time to heal and hoped that one day she would learn to love him. Weeks after, Uwa visited her mother and sister, but when she got there, Akachi refused to talk to her or gave her a listening ear. Uwa cried bitterly in pain. She tried to explain, but all her efforts were in vain. This continued for so many months, till one fateful day. Akachi was taking some food to her friends when she met a handsome beggar sitting by the roadside, begging for alms. Akachi felt pity for him and gave him the food instead. They talked for a while, and he introduced himself as Chinonso from the neighboring village. After a long chat with Chinonso, Akachi started to like him, and they became so close. Akachi would always take 3 square meals to him every day, and in no time, they grew in love with each other. Uwa finally learned to love her husband as they live in peace as husband and wife. Uwa was 4 weeks pregnant already for her husband, and they embarked on a journey the next day to share the good news with her mother and sister. When they got there, she was scared to talk to her sister Akachi, but to her greatest amazement, Akachi hugged her and congratulated her as they began to cry, and they said millions of apologies to each other. Their mother, Ori, was very happy that the two sisters finally had the chance to reunite. Akachi shared her love story with Uwa, and they were happy for each other. Chinonso proposed to Akachi. She agreed to marry him, and 2 weeks after, he came with his uncles for introductions, and soon the wedding date was fixed. But before the wedding, Chinonso took Akachi to his house, and to her greatest surprise, Chinonso was not a roadside beggar, but the only son of the richest man in the neighboring village. He explained the reason why he acted like a beggar, just to get a woman that would show him true love from the heart. Akachi was so happy. Then she realized that if not for tradition that stopped her from getting married initially, she wouldn't have seen or met Chinonso. A week after, they got married. Uwa and Akachi were very happy that they finally found love. And 9 months later, Uwa gave birth to a healthy baby girl, while Akachi was 4 months pregnant for her husband, and they all lived happily ever after.